So I'm going to explain the difference between direct method and indirect method and how are you going to prepare those method. Alright, this is a direct method. It's quite straightforward. These are the 4 items that are fixed in the direct method: cash receipt from customer, cash paid to supplier, cash paid to employees, and cash paid for other expenses. So basically, to identify this item, for A, you need to open the trade receivable account because it relates to your customer. B is you have to open your trade payable account. C is relating to wages and salary, which is in your administration. If you still remember, when you prepare publish, there are 3 categories of expenses: administration, selling, and financial. So the employees is specifically for the wages and salary that you paid to your customer. So to your employee, sorry. D is payment for other expenses. This one relates to the administration and selling expenses, which you have to take out the non-cash item, such as depreciation, amortization, loss in fair value, okay, loss in disposal of asset, right? And then you have to remember that these expenses here, D, does not relate to the financial expenses because the financial will be tackled in E here. Alright, so this is different with indirect method. Indirect method will take a longer way, which you start your operating activities from the net profit before tax figure from your SOPL, and you have to adjust for these 3 items, and this is also fixed. Alright, where you know that when you prepare your SOPL, you have the non-cash item, the depreciation, the amortization, the losses, the gain, okay, so those have to be reversed. Alright, which means that if in SOPL those NCI, the non-cash item, is deducted, so when you do the adjustment here, it should be add back. If in the SOPL it is a loss on fair value, it is deducted, so when you adjust here, it must be add back. In the SOPL, you add the gain on disposal, gain on fair value, so here you have to minus them. So that is it means by adjustment, where you have to reverse whatever you have done in the profit, because those items should not appear in the cash flow because it is a non-cash item. Okay, so I will explain that further when we discuss on the indirect method. So this is the first item in the direct method, which is cash receipt from customer. So you open the account receivable, you put in the BD and the CD, and then the normal item in the account receivable, of course, is sales. Okay, make sure that you know where should you pass that figures in the account receivable. Okay, sales, of course, is revenue, so in the sales account it is on the credit side, so in the account receivable it should be on the debit side. So the different when you balance off the account, you should get the difference should be the cash receipt that you get from your customer. And then for payment to supplier, you need to open the account payable, put in the BD and the CD. Of course, this is liability, so the BD should be on the credit side and the CD okay. Alright, and then you should have purchases in your account payable because you purchase from your supplier, but purchases account is not available, it's not given normally, you have to find it. So you can get it from the figures that is provided in your SOPL and SOP, which is basically purchases is used to calculate COGS. So purchases plus opening stock less closing stock, you get COGS. So you do the reverse. COGS is given in the SOPL. For example, it is 4,500, and then the inventory is given in the SOP, the opening and the closing. So you reverse them. So 4,500 you minus 6,000 and you plus with 2,000, you will get the purchases 500. So you put this 500 into the account, so that the difference when you balance off the account, this is the payment that you make to your supplier. Okay. Item C is the payment to employee, is basically the salaries and wages. So you may derive this figure by looking at your SOFP. If there is any accrual accrued salary and wages or prepayment, which is not common. Okay, normally it's accrued. Alright, so from here you can arrive at this figure 400. Okay, basically you just put in the BD because this is liability, so BD is on the credit side, and then you can get this 600 from the profit and loss under the administration expenses. If you remember, when you prepare your published account, wages and salary is classified under administration, so you can find that under SOPL. All right. Then the difference when you balance off this account would be the payment that you make to your employees. Okay, what happen if you don't find these accrued salaries and wages in the SOFP? So that means that these salaries and wages is incorporated in the expenses, okay, in the administration expenses ataupun operating expenses as given in the question in the SOPL. So in that case, probably if the question does not specifically tell you how much is salary and wages, that means you have to combine item C and D, all right, which is you can't identify the salary and wages, so you just consider that wage and salary under these other expenses. All right, so when you do this identify payment for other expenses, make sure you have to take out the non-cash item, like I mentioned just now, depreciation and any losses, and also any accrual and prepayment of expenses. So this accrual and prepayment, how do you adjust? By you just open the accrued and the prepayment account so that you can exclude them, all right, from the expenses. Okay, you can check from the SOFP if there is any accrued or prepaid expenses. So if there is none, so you just can proceed with adjustment for the non-cash item. Okay, this is the one that I mentioned on the indirect method. So basically, when you calculate using a direct method and indirect method, you should arrive at the same figure for the operating activities, the cash flow from operating activities. So this is where you start with net profit before tax, all right, where you get the figure from the SOPL. This is net profit after tax. So the one that you transfer into your cash flow is actually before the tax. All right. So if the question gave you after tax, that means you have to add back. Okay. If the question gave you after tax, you have to add back. Tapi if the question provide you with this detail, tak payah add back lah. You just take the profit before tax. So you put it under your cash flow. And then this is why you need to adjust, because in your SOPL still you have prepared the published account before. I'm sure that you know. Okay, you have first thing that you have to adjust under the indirect method is the non-cash item. So the non-cash item is inside the administrative here, and also maybe in the selling when you have a depreciation on motor vehicle, and you may also have amortization on intangible asset. You may have loss on fair value of biological asset, loss on fair value of investment property. Okay, so those are expenses. Okay, and then maybe you have gain on fair value of investment property, so that fall under income. Okay, tak ada kat sini tunjuk, let's say ada lah kat sini income. You have gain on disposal of PPE, you have gain on fair value of biological asset, gain on fair value of investment property, you have gain on foreign exchange. Okay, so those are non-cash items, so you have to reverse them back. If it is expenses in the SPL, you deduct, so in the cash flow you have to add back. If it is income non-cash item, all right, if it is income in the SOPL, it is added, so in the cash flow you have to minus, so dia punya direction dia opposite. Okay, so these are some of example lah. yang saya pun dah mention tadi, those non-cash item that you need to adjust. Alright, and then what is the meaning of non-operating? Okay, non-operating di sini you have to adjust. Apa maksud dia? Contoh, okay, contoh. When you prepare the cash flow, you have 3 categories: operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. So the one that you're doing now under the indirect method is the operating activities. So when you do the indirect method, you start with the net profit. Net profit does not classify that activity into operating, investing, and financing. Dia tak classify begitu. Dia classify according to admin, selling, and finance, which is different. So when you prepare the SOPL, you see you have a dividend received here. Okay, this is in the SOPL. But in the cash flow, dividend received should fall under investing. Okay, because investment is your non-current asset. Non-current asset is investment. So anything relating to investment must go under the investing. So that means this dividend received is actually in the net profit here. Currently you are preparing, you are trying to identify what is the cash flow from operating, and you know that dividend is not operating activity, this is investing activity. So that's why you need to adjust that. You need to adjust for any non-operating activities, okay, untuk keluarkan dia daripada net, daripada cash flow from operating activity. So example here, investment income yang tadilah, dividend receive. Okay, so what you do, you take it out from the operating, but you add back into investing activity. That means this item will appear twice in your cash flow, right? For interest expenses, okay, alright, interest expenses you add in the operating expenses, but then you will minus. Okay, sekejap saya tunjuk. Okay, this one when you prepare your publish account, remember your SOPL you deduct for the final expenses, and this final expenses is referring to interest, and this is interest expenses, bukan interest paid. Okay, so when you do the indirect method, cash flow indirect method, okay, we have to adjust this interest expenses because this interest expenses is including accrued or prepayment lah. So you have, kalau dalam SOPL you tolak, so in the cash flow you have to add back the total interest expenses, but then you have to less lah, because the standard of cash flow always you have this E and F for both direct and indirect method. Interest paid and tax paid memang tetap. So this is the interest paid that you have to show in the cash flow even in the indirect method. Okay, so that's why kat sini dia kata add in operating expenses, because dalam cash flow kita hanya ambil kira interest paid, bukan interest expenses. Okay, nanti kita buat soalan, nanti kita ingat balik lah. And then premium or redemption, this is less from operating but add into the financing activity. But for your syllabus, I think you don't have this premium or redemption. This is what you pay more for the redemption of preference share capital. Okay, and then the third adjustment is the working capital. Working capital is basically in the item in your current asset and your current liability. So what you have in your current asset and your current liability will be taken into account in working capital. To some exception, ada certain benda dalam working capital yang kita tidak ambil lah. Nanti kita akan tengok Okay, so if you look at how you do adjustment for the working capital, you go back to your accounting equation, your basic accounting equation, which is asset plus expenses equal to capital plus liability. So what you are doing now is a bank. You are preparing a cash flow. That means you are finding what is the bank figure. Okay, what is the cash flow figure? So you are finding the asset. Bank is asset. So you are finding this asset figure. So you have to see whether this working capital, apakah itemnya. Okay, for example, if the item is asset, contoh dia adalah trade receivable. Okay, we are in the indirect method, Let's say it is a trade receivable. Trade receivable is asset. Okay, so what happened to the trade receivable? Is it increased? So if the trade receivable increase, then what happened to the bank? Bank of course dia akan minus. Okay, follow this row. Because trade receivable is asset, bank is also asset. So when they are in the same house, they must have an opposite direction. Kalau tak, nanti tak balance. Okay, so if it is trade receivable, reduce. So opposite dia adalah bank will increase. So less and plus ni akan involve masa you kira cash flow, you have to add or you have to deduct lah. Let's say if it is a liability, trade payable is a liability. If your trade payable increase, because trade payable is here, your bank asset is here. So bila dia rumah yang berbeza, dia mesti gerak sama, so that dia akan balance, because they are in the opposite side, so they must have the same direction. So when your trade payable increase, your bank must also increase. When your trade payable decrease, your bank must also decrease. So this will help you to know whether to add or to less. Ini contoh lah how you do it. This is referring to your current asset and current liability. Okay, of course the cash and cash equivalent kita tidak ambil kira because this is the one that we are calculating. Alright, so we ignore this. So what? The movement will only for trade receivable, inventory. Okay, ini contoh sajalah current tax asset. Ini kalau ada tax ni kita tak ambil kira kat sini, because tax kita ambil kira untuk cari tax expenses. Okay, itu kita akan buka account lain lah. So kalau current liability untuk working capital changes, kita akan ambil trade payable, borrowing, okay, provision. Ini contoh je. Alright. Okay, so settle. So the hard way is only for the indirect method under the operating. Okay, direct method, indirect method hanya untuk cari operating cash flow from operating activity sahaja. Tapi jawapan dia akan samalah whether you using direct method or indirect method. You should get the same figure for the for the operating activity. So investing activity is any activity relating to your non-current asset, the upper part of your SOP. Okay, ini contoh-contohnya lah. So any purchase, any payment, purchase, disposal, alright, will go under the investing. And financing is anything that relates to your equity and your liability. Okay, so any payment or money received from your borrowing should go under here, including any interest lah, because interest is relating to loan. So of course interest go under financing. Kalau dividend paid to your investor will also goes here, financing, because dividend is relate to your equity, share capital, because share capital is equity. So di bawah financing activity, so dividend payment is also under financing activity. Okay, alright. So these are example, the cash inflow and the cash outflow for the financing activity. Alright, so this is just a summary. Net increase in cash and net decrease in cash, because at the end of your cash flow, after you have total up the cash flow from operating, investing and financing, you will get net increase in cash sekiranya your cash flow itu adalah positif, ataupun net decrease in cash when your cash flow after you add all the three category of activity itu, if you get negative, so it is called net decrease in cash. So how you comment on that? Net increase, you say the company is running its operation efficiently and responsible in managing its investing, meaning that the company is efficient in managing its asset. Ataupun secara negatifnya might reflect that management is getting lazy about reinvesting. kenapa duit dia banyak, kenapa dia tak spend. Okay, when you look at the cash flow, the net cash flow, you see, oh, there's a lot of cash balance in the company, and then you look at the investing activity, tak ada, kurang. Okay, the cash flow from investing is very small. Why? So this is how the cash flow help the management to assess how effectively the company is managing its cash. By right, if the company have extra cash, they should plan on how to invest those cash into profitable investments so that they can generate more income. Okay, and sometimes when you make investment on your non-current asset, tambah asset, probably it helps to boost your sales, contohnya lah. So tak semestinya kalau banyak cash tu bagus lah. Okay, alright. If let's say you get your cash flow decrease, you get negative, so you see that might also the reason might be due to a major investment in the company's asset. Okay, so bila banyak investment ni, bagus ke tak? Sehingga you dapat negative cash flow. So you have to assess whether those assets that you purchase, have you optimized the usage. Okay, optimize usage, because you have to remember those non-current asset sepatutnya is used to generate more income, to make more sales. Okay, so that's the investment. You have to invest your money in there. So you should be able to generate more income. Okay. And then negative cash flow may indicate problem with the company's operating, investing or financing. Probably you see, contohnya when you look at the financing, the company is paying too much for the interest, contohnya. Tapi sepatutnya when the company make borrowing, where the money goes, those borrowed money should be used on profitable activities. Okay, probably to buy asset. And then dia relates lah, when you borrow money to buy asset, and do you use that asset to make more sales for the product? So this is how the company can assess each category of its activities. Okay, whether the operating is effective, whether investment is effective, or whether the financing is effective. So that's why cash flow, the good effect, okay, the good effect of preparing cash flow is you'll be able to assess in detail how effective is your activities in running the business, and you cannot find that in the cash in the profit figure, because you don't classify your expenses according to operating, investing and financing. Alright, so I hope that you have refreshed your mind on the cash flow, and you will get a better understanding when you do more question and exercises. Alright, thank you.